It was a day that began like any other, but for Sarah, it was about to become a day she'd remember for the rest of her life. In her early 30s, Sarah had built a comfortable, modest life. She and her husband, John, had two little ones at home, and Sarah worked at a quaint, cozy bookstore downtown. They weren't rich or poor, just content. Life was pleasantly predictable. But on this particular chilly morning, as Sarah's heels clicked along the frosty sidewalk, something extraordinary was waiting around the corner. As she picked up the warm, inviting scent of freshly ground coffee from the bakery, an impulsive thought struck her. She'd quickly check her bank balance. She wasn't expecting anything unusual, just the usual figures reflecting her humble paycheck and daily expenses. She tapped her card on the ATM, and then her world turned upside down. The screen glared back at her with a figure she could scarcely comprehend: $37 million. Sarah blinked, her breath catching as she read the number over and over. Could it really be? She thought about the well-maintained, modest little house they had, the second-hand car, and their carefully budgeted vacations. This was an amount of money that could change everything. Heart-pounding, Sarah immediately called John, her grounded, pragmatic husband. He picked up, his voice warm and familiar. "What's up, honey? You won't believe this. I think the bank made a mistake. There's $37 million in our account, John. $37 million. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then John's tone turned incredulous, mixed with an excitement he couldn't hide. "Are you serious, Sarah? That's insane." For the first time in years, they let themselves fantasize about the unimaginable. Ideas tumbled through their minds in a whirlwind of possibilities. A villa in the countryside, a beautiful sailboat, the chance to travel anywhere, to change their lives entirely. It was tempting, and Sarah felt herself caught up in the vision. John, usually the steadfast and responsible one, was equally dazzled. They exchanged a look. This was a door to a different life. That evening, they told their closest friends, Laurel and Julie. Their jaws dropped as Sarah showed them the bank balance, and a new wave of excitement broke over the room. Laurel's eyes sparkled, and she mused aloud about grand vacations and a boat of their own, things they'd never dared to hope for. Even Julie, usually so practical, seemed momentarily swept up in the dream, his mind racing with possibilities. But just as quickly as their fantasies had started, a nagging worry crept in. Could this really be a gift from fate? Or was it a mistake that would lead to serious trouble if they even touched the money? The rational part of them knew they had to go to the bank, but the thought of returning the money made Sarah's heart sink. The following day, John and Sarah entered the bank, a towering building with a sense of authority. As they stepped inside, they were greeted not by a welcoming smile, but by the bank manager, whose face was pale, almost ghostly. He hurried over, his voice thick with apology. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid there's been a monumental error. We were hoping you'd come in before anything else." John and Sarah exchanged glances, a sense of disappointment mixed with relief washing over them. The bank swiftly corrected the error, and as they left, the spark of their dreams began to dim. On the way home, they felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness, realizing that the wild adventure they'd glimpsed was gone. Though it was a fleeting moment, that $37 million taught them something they'd never forget. For just one day, they'd tasted a different life. The experience became a story they would tell for years to come, a reminder of how close they'd come to something extraordinary. And in the end, they returned to their modest life with a deeper appreciation, knowing that some of the most priceless things in life weren't measured in dollars at all. Life gradually returned to normal for Sarah and John, though the memory of that surreal day lingered like an old, beloved photograph in their minds. Every so often, they'd exchange a glance, a knowing smile, as if to say, "Remember when we were millionaires, if only for a moment." Yet, even though the balance had been corrected and the $37 million was gone, something had undeniably changed within them. There was a subtle but powerful shift in their perspective. The taste of that other life, so fleeting and illusory, had unlocked a part of them they hadn't known was there. a sense of daring, a hunger for more, and a spark of wonder. A few weeks after their visit to the bank, Sarah found herself daydreaming as she walked to the bookstore. She wondered what it would be like to step out of her comfort zone and pursue something more. Maybe she didn't need millions to make small, brave changes. Maybe what she truly wanted was closer than she'd thought. That evening, as she set the table for dinner, Sarah decided to share her musings with John. "You know, I keep thinking, maybe we should take a chance on something," she said, gently testing the waters. "I mean, we've always talked about wanting to do more, to make a change, haven't we?" John looked up, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Are you talking about that little cafe we've dreamed about, the one by the coast?" "Exactly," she replied, her voice growing more excited. "We might not have $37 million, but we've saved up. And now I feel like maybe we don't have to wait for someday." John was quiet, but she could see that familiar glimmer of excitement sparking in his eyes. They stayed up late that night, whispering like school kids about their dream cafe, one that would overlook the ocean, with books lining the walls, a cozy nook for families, and pastries Sarah would bake herself. They imagined how it might feel to wake up each day with a sense of freedom and adventure, building something they could call their own. The decision didn't come lightly, but with each passing day, their courage grew. They began to tighten their budget, cutting out little luxuries and setting aside more. Sarah took extra shifts at the bookstore, while John started freelance consulting on the side, both working toward a common dream. They told their friends Laurel and Julie, who encouraged them with every step, reminding them of how close they had come to the world of the wildly rich and urging them to chase their own version of that life, even if it was on a smaller, humbler scale. Months passed, and their savings grew. Finally, one autumn morning, they took the plunge, purchasing a little property on the coast. They named the cafe the Lucky Penny, a nod to the day they felt like fortune's darlings. Sarah poured her heart into every corner, decorating it with vintage books and tiny plants, while John handcrafted the tables and counters, giving each piece a personal touch. Friends and family gathered to celebrate on opening day, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries filled the air. It was modest, but it was theirs, a world they had created from a seed of inspiration. Years down the road, Sarah and John would tell new friends and loyal customers about the $37 million that had once appeared in their account. Some would laugh in disbelief, others would marvel at how the experience had ignited their courage. For Sarah and John, though, that day had given them more than a fleeting fantasy. It had given them a reason to dream and a reminder that the magic of life wasn't necessarily in unexpected millions, but in the bravery to chase the dreams within their reach. And every so often, in the quiet moments at the Lucky Penny, Sarah would glance out the window at the shimmering ocean, smile to herself, and think, maybe we were the real millionaires all along. As the years passed, the Lucky Penny became more than just a cafe. It became a beloved gathering place, woven into the fabric of the coastal town. Travelers passing through would often remark on its charm, drawn in by the homey atmosphere and the irresistible scent of Sarah's pastries. Locals became regulars, finding comfort in the familiar faces of Sarah and John, who greeted each customer as a friend. Children huddled in the cozy reading nook, leafing through picture books while their parents sipped coffee nearby, exchanging stories and laughter. One particularly stormy winter night, Sarah found herself alone in the cafe, cleaning up after closing. As she wiped down the counters, she happened to glance up and saw a familiar face through the window. Laurel. It had been years since they'd seen each other, but in a heartbeat, the old friend was inside, shaking off the rain and wrapping Sarah in a warm hug. "Laurel," Sarah beamed, "I can't believe it's you." Laurel's eyes sparkled as she looked around the cozy cafe. "I had to see the Lucky Penny for myself. I've heard so many good things, this place. It's exactly how I pictured it." They settled in by the window, sipping tea and catching up on years of memories. Laurel shared stories of her own journey, a life filled with adventures, some stumbles, and ultimately a path she loved. Sarah, in turn, recounted the story of the $37 million and how that surreal moment had changed everything. "I still think about it sometimes," Sarah admitted, a nostalgic smile playing on her lips. "That day we thought we were rich. It was a crazy feeling, like we'd won some cosmic lottery." Laurel chuckled, her eyes glinting with mischief. "So tell me, after all these years, do you ever wish you'd kept it? Chosen the big house, the fancy life?" Sarah thought for a moment, gazing around the cafe, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "You know, that kind of life would have been exciting, but I think I found my real treasure here. This place, this life, it feels like everything I ever wanted even if I didn't know it at the time." Laurel smiled, nodding. "You're a millionaire in the ways that count, Sarah. Look at what you've created. You followed your heart, and it led you here." As the storm raged outside, they sat by the warm glow of the cafe lights, reminiscing about the lives they'd chosen and the twists of fate that had brought them there. Laurel stayed the night with Sarah and John, and the three of them laughed and shared memories into the early hours, grateful for the journey each of them had taken. Over the years, the Lucky Penny continued to flourish. It wasn't just a cafe. It was a testament to the power of daring to dream and to the beauty of a life built from love and hard work. Sarah and John grew older together, watching as their children grew up with memories of their family cafe by the sea. And when Sarah would tell the story of that $37 million surprise to new customers, she would always end with a laugh, saying, "I may not have a mansion or a yacht, but I got to build a little corner of the world that's all my own. And for me, that's priceless." The story of the Lucky Penny became a legend in the town, a reminder to anyone who heard it that sometimes the richest people aren't the ones with the most money, but those who find wealth in the simple joys and the courage to follow their hearts.